Namo Buddhaya, Namo Ratanataya. So this evening we are commemorating the Parinibbāna of Venerable Bhikkhunī Yasodharā, also known as Bhaddā Kaccānā Therī. And so for us, at least, this is a launching of awareness this year. This is not something we have commemorated in the past, but I am presenting this on behalf of Ayatthā Loka, who has been doing just really wonderful research and learning many things which are new to us anyway, and I think maybe new to many of you also. So we're very happy to share that this year. And this is the full moon Uposatha, Paguna Punami. So, remembering the Parinibbāna of one of the great Bhikkhuni arahants is a form of Sangha Nusati, so recollection of the arahants. And first of all, what is Parinibbāna? This is the entering into final Nibbana with the release of the body. And for any of the great disciples, great arahant disciples of the Buddha, this is a really momentous occasion. And for those who are not yet fully awakened, it may be a time of grief as one of these great beings departs our world. And for those who are strongly Dhamma-minded, and for other arahants, this is a time of celebration of their freedom. So we have texts that describe the Parinibbanas of a number of the Buddha's close disciples, such as Sariputta and Moggallana. And in some places, the anniversaries of these are recognized and remembered during the year. But what about the Buddha's arahanti bhikkhuni disciples? So the Pali text canon, the Tipitaka Mula, records the Parinibbāna of two of the Buddha's most outstanding Etadagga Savaka bhikkhuni disciples, that of Mahābhiññapattānam Gautami Therī and Yasodharā Bhaddā Kaccānā Therī. These accounts are found in the Sutta Pitaka's Khuddaka Nikaya in the Therī Abhidhamma, and this is the heroic biographies of the Buddha's foremost bhikkhuni disciples. And if you're interested to read for yourself, there are freely available English translations of the Therī Abhidhamma. There's one on Sutta Central, and there's also the website Legends of the Buddhist Saints, which has a version translated by Jonathan Walters. But when were there Parinibbanas? Now, for both Mahābhiññapattānam Gautami Therī and Yasodharā Bhaddā Kaccānā Therī, in the Pali Canon, the Therī Abhidhamma records the stories of their Parinibbanas, and it implies the timing, but it doesn't state it specifically. About 12 years ago, Ayatthā Loka learned from Bhante Sujato, who was starting up Sutta Central, that there is a Chinese parallel to the Therī Abhidhamma that does record the date of Mahābhiññapattānam Gautami Therī's Parinibbāna. And later, she learned from Bhikkhu Analayo and from Bhikkhuni Dhammadina that there are additional Chinese and Tibetan parallels which give more detail. So in those texts, Mahābhiññapattānam Gautami Therī's Parinibbāna is recorded as being a week after the full moon of the lunar month of Magha, which is usually February. And so now Dhammadharini and others recognize this event each year. And you can see on the right, here's a poster from an event that was held this year at what we think is the location of Mahābhiññapattān's stupa. That was led by Nalanda University, the Retracing Bodhisatta Xuanzang Project, India Minister of Culture, and so they have, and other organizations, and so they have gotten together to begin commemorating this year at the site of her stupa, commemorating her Parinibbāna. But what about Yasodharā Therī? So first, to talk a little more about who she is. So she appears numerous times in the Pali Canon, and she's known by several different names and epithets. So for example, she was one of the foremost fully awakened arahant bhikkhuni disciples of the Buddha. She's described in the Anguttara Nikaya's Book of the Ones, in the Etadagga Vagga, where she's known by the name Venerable Bhaddā Kaccānā Therī. She was a princess, and she was the wife of the Bodhisatta before he went forth and awakened as the Buddha. She's described in the Khuddaka Nikaya, in the Teri Upadana, where she's known by the name Yasodharā, bearer of glory. She was also the mother of Rahula, who was the son she had with the Bodhisatta, and she appears in the Vinaya Pitaka with the epithet Rahula Mata, Rahula's mother. She also had a very long history with the Buddha over a multitude of lifetimes, and she appears in a Pali text Jataka, commentaries and manuscripts, where she usually has the name Bimbā, meaning golden. So what else do we know about her? She was one of 7 co-natals of the Buddha. She was born on the same day. They got married at age 16, and she had their son Rahula when she was 29. Then the Bodhisatta went forth, leaving her behind. So the texts tell us that she was getting news of his practice and his renunciation. And even though she was living in the palace, she was mirroring his practice. She was removing her royal garments and wearing simple kasaya robes. She was removing her royal jewels and no longer using makeup and perfumes. She was abstaining from the use of grand king and queen size beds and seats. And she was fasting and doing other practices of self-mortification. All of this during the 6 years that the Buddha was doing these practices leading up to his awakening. So after the Buddha's awakening, he returned back to Kapilavatthu, and the other ladies of the court went to pay their respects to the Buddha, but Yasodhara stayed behind, and the Buddha went to see her. And the stories tell us that she fell at his feet and wept. And the Buddha knew of her loyalty during the time that he had been away. And he recounted a story of one of their past lives together, which at that time she didn't remember, the Chanda Kinara Jataka, in which she had also displayed her complete loyalty to him. And with hearing this story, she realized her stream entry and dried her tears. And she was age 37. At age 40, she ordained as a bhikkhuni, and dedicatedly practicing vipassana, she attained the fruits of arahantship within 15 days. The Buddha named her as one of his foremost disciples. Etadagang bhikkhave mama savikanang bhikkhuninang mahābhiññapattānam yadidang Bhaddā Kaccānā. Monks, this is the foremost of my bhikkhuni disciples in attainment of the higher knowledges, Bhaddā Kaccānā. So there's a really wonderful video on YouTube of some monastics at Empty Cloud Monastery in New Jersey, chanting the canonical Agasavika Bhikkhuni chant, the foremost bhikkhunis, which I'm not going to play right now because we're short on time, but we'll definitely share the link, and I encourage everyone to go listen to it. It's really wonderful. So remembering and honoring Yasodhara Therī. So for so many other foremost disciples of the Buddha, we know the date of the anniversary of their Parinibbāna, and we have tangible evidence of their lives in the form of stupas and relics. So does any of this exist for Yasodhara Therī? And these are the questions that Ayatthaloka had been asking for 10 years, leading up to just before we entered into winter retreat this year. We don't have records of these in the canonical Pali text Yasodhara Teri Upadana, but do they exist elsewhere? Now, there are other sources of information. There are Pali texts and manuscripts additional to the Pali Canon, which record the stories of the Buddha and his teachings, his life, and his disciples. There are parallel canonical texts recorded in other languages, such as the Chinese translation of the Taisho Tripitaka and Tibetan translations in the Kangyur Tibetan canon. And Ayatthaya had for years been keeping an eye out for any Chinese or Tibetan text parallels to the Yasodharā Therī Abhidhana, which had been so useful with Mahābhiññapattānam Gotami, but in this case had not found any yet. They might be out there. If you know of it, let us know. There are also old and diverse polytext manuscript traditions of South and Southeast Asia, both canonical and extra-canonical, which record smaller and greater variations of these stories and teachings, including compositions of varying lengths, some of which are summaries and some of which are elaborations. And through the centuries, people who were keen on making and sharing merit have invited and sponsored recitations and copying of these texts, of these fragile palm leaf manuscripts, which has preserved and passed down these traditions within these Buddhist communities. So there's a Sri Lankan manuscript tradition. In 2009, Ayatthaya learned of this book, which is by Sri Lankan author and translator Ranjini Obayasekare. It's Yasodharā, the wife of the Bodhisattva. And this book includes a translation of the Sinhalese Pali manuscript of the Yasodharā Abhidhanaya. And this manuscript is interesting because it's otherwise nearly identical to the canonical Pali text, but it does mention both relics and the establishment of a reliquary stupa of the great Therī Yasodharā. But what do we still not know at this point? So about a month before the beginning of our winter retreat, Deepak Anand of the Retracing Bodhisattva Xuanzang Project wrote to Ayatthaya and asked her about Yasodharā Therī, asking, was the date and the place of Yasodharā Therí's Parinibbāna known? And was there also a stupa recorded, as there is for Mahābhiññapattānam Gotami Therī? So she had to answer sadly, something like, no, we don't know the date. Old Buddhist manuscripts in Sri Lanka say that there was a Parinibbāna relic stupa, but I haven't been able to learn anything about the location either. But then, just before the start of our retreat, Ayatthaya had a feeling that there was more to the story and that the time was right for it to begin to emerge. She remembered reading of a Savaka Nibbana genre of old Pali text manuscripts. And she followed up and did some searching, and she found an article of Professor Peter Skilling. And in that article, in a footnote, she found mention of an 18th century Thai painting depicting the Bimbā, which is at the Walters Museum in Baltimore. However, this painting had been mislabeled by the museum as depicting the Buddha's parinirvana, though the painting itself contains a clear caption in Thai script which says Bimbā. In other words, the Parinibbāna of Bimbā Yasodharā Therī. So after an extensive search through the museum's online exhibit for the mislabeled painting, she saw for the first time a depiction of this great Theri's Parinibbāna. And this is the painting you see here on the slide, and that we also have on our altar. And we have a zoom in here on the caption, which reads Bimbā in Thai script. So with this encouragement and blessing, she put out a quick online request to friends for any more information, and rapidly and progressively learned a lot more. So soon, searching in Thai, Khmer, and Lao scripts, she found a treasure trove of information. So there actually exists an extensive, rich, and diverse Bimbā Yasodharā Parinibbāna manuscript tradition of mainland Southeast Asia. There are texts from southern Thailand, from central Thailand, from Lanatai in Thailand's northwest, from Laos in the northeast, from Cambodia in the east, and from Myanmar in the west. And there are catalog listings and scanned images of some of these that are available online. And one of those is shown on the left of this slide. But it's not necessarily simple or straightforward to read them. So Ayatollah contacted scholar Trent Walker, who's an assistant professor of Southeast Asian Studies and Thai professor of Theravada Buddhism at the University of Michigan. And he was able to provide her with a link to a Romanized Pali critical edition of the Southern and Central Thai manuscript traditions. And that's the book you see here on the right. This was published in 2003 by a team of Thai researchers with support from the Queen Sirindorn Anthropology Center research database. And it's a collection of old polytext manuscripts of Bimbā Yasodharā Therī Parinibbāna, which are preserved in old Khmer, Kom, and Mon scripts. And as well as a study, the book included a critical edition in Romanized Pali with Thai translation. So here's the title of the book in the original Thai, and it's Examination and Analytical Study of Pali Language Editions of the Bimbā Bhikkhunī Nibbāna Scripture by two Thai researchers. So consulting with Trent Walker, they reviewed key portions of this long Pali text and found record of the date of Bimbā Yasodharā Teri's Parinibbāna, the location of Bimbā Yasodharā Teri's Parinibbāna, and mention of the creation of a Chaitya stupa of Bimbā Yasodharā Teri's crematory relics. So first, the date of Bimbā Yasodharā Teri's Parinibbāna, and here we have a picture of the page from the book with the relevant part highlighted. And this includes the date Punami Uposatha Pagunamase, meaning the Paguna Punami, in Sanskrit, Phaguna Punima, which is the full moon Uposatha of the month of Paguna, which is passed down as the 15th day of the 4th lunar month on the Thai calendar. And that is today. So this full moon is already remembered as the anniversary of the Buddha's first return to his hometown of Kapilavatthu, as well as also Suddhodana Raja's and Mahābhiññapattānam Gautami's stream entry days, and Yasodharā Teri's stream entry day, the following day. It is also the lunar anniversary of the revival of Theravada dual ordination in Sri Lanka, which this year will be 26 years ago. And now we will also remember it as the Most Venerable Arahati Bhaddā Kaccānā Bimbā Yasodharā Teri's Parinibbāna Day. And this year, that full moon is today, yesterday and today. So the texts also tell us about the location of Bimbā Yasodharā Teri's Parinibbāna in the northwest of Savatthi at her Bhikkhuni Arame near the Atiravati River, which is now River Rapti. So here's a map of Savatthi, and we're going to zoom in on this upper right corner here. And so this is the old course of that river, which is now following a new course. But in this area, you can see there are, the Angulimala stupa is in this area. And we don't know exactly where her stupa was. There are 3 things here that look like they could be mounds which have not been excavated, but we don't know, but the texts say it should be somewhere in this area. So sorry, that was where her Parinibbāna occurred, and then the text describe the establishment of a Chaitya stupa for the great Arahati's bone relics. So those might be the mounds, unexcavated mounds we see on that previous map. So where are those relics now? So we have some information about this in Sri Lanka, according to the Dhatu Vangsa, together with the Buddha's highly venerated forehead bone relic, there were arahant relics enshrined in the 2nd century BCE in the Seruvila Mangalasaya Chaitya Stupa in Trincomalee in Sri Lanka's eastern province. And among them were relics of 2 great bhikkhuni arahats, Mahābhiññapattānam Gotami and Yasodharā Therī. And for a time, this stupa was inaccessible due to civil war, but it's now accessible again and has been recently restored. So another breakthrough in Ayatthaloka's search. In response to her request, friends in Sri Lanka let her know of a recently constructed stupa in Sri Lanka, re-enshrining ancient relics of Yasodharā Therī. And you can see a picture here on the right of those relics prior to their re-enshrinement. This new stupa was built by the mahābhiññapattānam monastic community of Sri Lanka, which is led by the Venerable Kiribadgoda Jnanananda Thera. And this community takes highly respecting the ancient stupas and relics of the Buddha and the Buddha's arahant disciples very seriously. So here are pictures from the Sri Yasodharā Mahāsaya Chaitya Stupa in Udupila. And this stupa was inaugurated with great celebration 9 years ago with the formal re-enshrinement of an ancient relic of Rahulamata Yasodharā Therī. And there's a wonderful video online of a slideshow of this celebration and pictures of them dropping flower petals from a helicopter, which again, I think I'll wait until the end and we'll show the videos if there's time at the end. So there are also records that there were relics of Bimbā Yasodharā Therī enshrined in Thailand. According to a listing of registered reliquary chaityas in Thailand and the relics they enshrine, there are 2 chaitya stupas in southern Thailand, which enshrine Bimbā Therī's relics, which were from ancient Thai stupas, which have been recently either renovated and restored or reconstructed. There's also Wat Doi Dhammachedi in northern Thailand in Sakon Nakhon, which enshrines relics of the Buddha and 24 arahants, which contains relics of Bimbā Yasodharā Therī. And here on the right, you can see a picture of that chaitya and the relics. There's also Wat Santidam, also in northern Thailand in Chiang Mai, which contains Bimbā Therī relics in its famous collection of arahanta relics. There's also one of 2 sets shown here of Bimbā Therī relics in the private Gunarom collection, here pictured in a Thai royally presented commemorative book of that collection. So we've learned a lot and certainly know a lot more about this than we did a few months ago. And it feels like there's probably a lot more to learn, and very much interested in whether any of you can help. We've already gotten a lot of help from friends, and just very curious, does anyone know of any other inspiring artworks which just depict Bimbā Yasodharā Therī's Parinibbāna? Where in India is the Yasodhara Stupa? Where exactly? Is there a parallel of the story of Yasodhara Therī's Parinibbāna told in the Chinese text Tipitaka or the Tibetan text Tipitaka? And as this story has been handed down over the centuries, there are a lot of different variations, which sometimes are quite interesting. And so what can we learn from those different variations? And are there any other important resources that we haven't yet uncovered? And, as you said, this year we are launching awareness for us and probably many others outside of these places where these traditions were passed down. So we'll be commemorating this next year here at Dhammadharini. And, what would you like to do next year to remember and commemorate this great arahant bhikkhuni. So thank you very much.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Would you like to invite questions now?
Yes, I think let me stop sharing. And yes, let's give an opportunity if anyone has questions or comments or thoughts, or it's very interesting to see how as we learn stories of more of these ancient Therī bhikkhunis and learn more about them, how it's these stories really strike everyone differently, and some people find one of these bhikkhuni Therīs very inspiring over another one, and just very interested to know if anyone has any thoughts.
Will their question be audible through your device?
That is a good question. Yes.
Venerable Kaccānā, do you have any thought or blessing to add to this?
So Sobana is asking, she doesn't have her microphone on, does Venerable Kaccānā have any thought to add?
Oh. Yeah, I guess I'm just interested in the future.
Okay. We're getting echoing. Is that on your end or our end?
I'm hearing echoing also.
Okay.
Not echoing now?
Okay, it's okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I guess just listening to the presentation, I'm thinking, well, what is under those mounds in that picture? Like that's sort of the mysterious and interesting aspect of it is like, oh, the exploration and the discovery, and I appreciate that aspect of the presentation that you've just shared. So thank you.
Great, thank you very much. I don't know if Parinibbāna is. Sheila has a hand up. Yes, Sheila.
Good evening. Thank you so much for this really inspiring Dhamma message and talk this evening. I am inspired by a 15-day kind of stream entry period. That is extremely inspiring to me. And I wondered, wow, what might have been involved? And I guess if we're still uncovering history, the details may not be available, but I just find that heartwarming and a North Star. Just beautiful to know.
So it was actually, she achieved stream entry just almost immediately after the Buddha returned and told her that Jataka story. And then after her bhikkhuni ordination, she achieved arahant, fruit of arahantship in 15 days.
Even more spectacular.
Right.
Yes, had a lot of paramis. She had been through many lifetimes. Had been a companion to the Bodhisatta in his previous lifetimes, and had encountered many previous Buddhas, and made this determination, had developed the perfections, had perfected the moral qualities and the qualities of practice. So that's why we get to go so quickly.
Thank you, IA. Sorry, we're having some audio weirdness when we both talk. I don't know. Parinibbāna is Ananaya has a hand up. Ananaya.
Well, first of all, I'm really happy that you're doing this, because I have felt for years since I first read the known history of Yasodharā. This was, 8 years ago or so. And I always felt she got short shrift. The Bhikkhuni stories in general get short shrift for sure. I just happened to reread the introduction to Bhikkhu Bodhi's Anguttara Nikaya, and he has several pages talking about the history of bhikkhunis and their history within the suttas. So anyway, I reread that and you know, it seems clear that part of this not knowing and part of the suttas that allude to women in very negative terms, it seems to be more an historical overlay as opposed to necessarily, I never for a minute have believed that the Buddha would say such things. It makes absolutely not one iota of common sense. And anyway, so I really was always inspired, especially because the sources that I read over the years, you know, just as Ayasodhara just alluded to, you know, the Buddha and Yasodhara had eons worth of lifetimes. I mean, long history and a commitment. So when you wonder why did you know, she obtained stream entry so quickly, and the other bhikkhus or whatever, these are long histories of practice before they happen to have the paramis to be born during the Buddha's, our current Buddha's time frame. So and I do also find that very inspiring, that with that kind of a clarity and commitment, that, well, number one, they deserved it, but it's still inspiring to hear it, right? You don't hear the modern day things, but I know the closest one in the modern era that I'm aware of, and there may be others, but was Bimbā. Now, she wasn't officially declared an arahant, but we don't have a body that does that. In other words, it's not like the Catholics with saints, and they go through a process and the Pope says, yep, she's really a saint, or he's really a saint. That doesn't exist in the same fashion in Buddhism. But anyway, I am really glad that there's been now being more attention paid to this, and I hope they find the stupa and all those kinds of things. It would be a real boost to bhikkhunis in general, and women in general as well. So thank you.
Right. Yeah. Thank you very much, Ananaya. Yeah, agreed. It's really, I think, good and important for us to hear and spread these stories and learn more about them. Speaking of which, I would like to recognize we have Vanessa Sasson on with us this evening, and she's the author of this fairly recent book, Yasodharā, a novel about the Buddha's wife, which I haven't read this one. I've read another of her books, which I really appreciated. I don't know, Vanessa, if you're interested in saying hello, but just wanted to okay. Just wanted to acknowledge that she was on with us, and we can share a link to her book this is a novelized version, but just as another way of spreading the story and, you know, bringing some awareness and, you know, bringing the story a bit to life, and maybe inspiring us to search out more of these historical details. So we have Parinibbāna here with us, who is now in the room, who's been kind of with us learning about some of this exploration. I'm wondering if she's interested in saying anything. So I think I need to give you a microphone. Do you want to come up here?
Just hold it. As a woman of Indian heritage, mixed heritage, but partly Indian, I would like to say how important this discovery is for young women all around the world and young bhikkhunis all around the world. So far, we have had documented information about arahants who were primarily male. And among the Buddha's family in his gene pool, this is a woman who I compare to the wife of Lord Rama in Hinduism. Sita followed Ram into the forest. well, Yasodharā couldn't because she had a baby to take care of at home. But she did every single thing that the Buddha did in her practice, showing her achar, reliability, dependability, and loyalty to him. I hope that the world who receives this information looks at it within the Indian context, where it actually occurred, within the culture within which it occurred. Because to take a Western lens and lay it upon this will create a lot of misunderstanding. And so I encourage anyone who has information to please contact Aya and share with her. She's an amazing researcher. She has contacts around the world of renowned researchers. And this information is unquestionable. She has checked, rechecked. She has done everything thoroughly to be able to verify every bit of information she has discovered. So I want to say this is a critically important sharing with the world at this point. This is going to be an extremely memorable piece of celebration in the Buddhist community for decades to come. This is the mother, this is the wife, this is the importance of the role of someone who was born with the Buddha for generations and generations to finally become his wife, his beloved, and the mother of his child. So please look at this information and receive it within the context of the culture where it occurred.
Yeah, thank you so much, Parinibbāna. Really appreciate your helping us understand that context. And absolutely, as she said, Ayatollah Taloka is very careful in her research and also very much open to learning more, and anyone who has any more information, or we're always happy to hear that.